the reason that choirs can hold notes for so long is that there's so many voices that if someone stops to breathe, like people can stop to breathe when they need to and it doesn't interrupt the note. And I think that organizing is also like that. Like you have to have enough people willing to show up that if someone needs to breathe, they can. And so many times we just work ourselves until there's no joy and it's not fun anymore. And you know what I mean? And like, yeah, it's not always going to be fun. Like positive change doesn't always equate to like fun and joy. But you have to be able to like find fun and joy and so in parts of it, or you won't be able to sustain it.
Welcome back to Texas Tea. I'm Roger Dupre with Eastwood Energy. This is Jen Sarduy of Re+Birth Equity. I'm going to try something a little bit different than most of the time. I think I've already prepped you on this, so I hope you see it coming. But for the very beginning of this, I know starting a nonprofit, super difficult, and for what you've done is amazing. If you were to give someone who's like, man, I really want to change the world, I want to start a nonprofit, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give them?
Yeah, so like someone who wants to change the world already has like everything that they need to change their community, like, and grow capacity. So my biggest piece of advice, I think, if someone wanted to change the world and like get all official and do all this stuff, is just like boil that idea down to like, what does this look like in my community in the future, right? So if like your theory for change is like you want more food, right?
Yeah.
What can I do right now in my community to like make more food, right? Like what do I not need permission for? And then grow from there. Like that's something that's really been transformative for me, is to think of like the least complicated way to do it and then grow from there. Like we always try to go the furthest up, or like right away, as I think it's like maybe more American than apple pie, is that we're like, how do I start at the top of the ladder with no skills and win at life? How do I win friends and influence people? So like I think I would say like just try to like affect change in our communities and like without asking for permission, and that will like automatically grow your network to actually get in there with like some resources when you have the kind of like capacity to do that.
So in short, kind of start small, start local.
I mean, start local for sure, and I don't think local is necessarily small, because like you can start big, and like what happens when like ideas get really big, then they centralize, right? So then there's like one organization that holds all of the influence and all of the funding over this one issue, right? So you can make a bigger impact if you took $100 and donated it to that nonprofit that owns all the resources. That's one way to do something. But you could also like spend $100 on seeds and start a community garden. Like there's a lot of ways to spend $100, and that will actually feed someone in your community. You can just like spend $100 and go buy food and like feed someone in your community. So it's not necessarily like a smaller change, because it's a huge change for the family that doesn't have food, but it's like more local for sure. And you don't need anyone's permission to buy seeds, and you know what I mean? So like, how can you actually like train yourself to be mission focused before you train yourself to be like a business person that does good?
Right.
Train yourself to like be on mission.
No, I got it. And there's an interesting thing that you said there. You can take $100 and just give it to a random nonprofit. You can take that $100, get something tangible, and start doing with that. I'm going to try to use this as a really good segment. I heard you are definitely, and I've been wanting to use this term, champion of the people, but going out to a lot of these city council meetings, getting out there and so on and so forth, literally doing the legwork, taking those resources and then getting out in front of there. As someone who's running this nonprofit, as someone who's getting in front of faces, there's always got to be a lot of pushback. So how do you deal when, because people are going to disagree with your ideas, obviously. How do you deal with someone who might be in a position of power and they're pushing back on you when you're trying to do something for good? How do you deal with that kind of dissonance of that situation?
Yeah, I think that power dynamics are like the most important thing there, right? Like if someone in power is pushing back on an idea that I have, one, I think that we like don't think of conflict as kind of a normative thing. Like it's okay to be in conflict with people, and we tend to like just hold that as like bad space. Like if we don't have good vibes all the time, then like something's wrong, and that's not necessarily true. Like people just are different, and they're going to have differences of opinion. So I think learning to like take feedback is important. But also like realizing that power dynamics do come into play when you're doing like stuff like trying to speak truth to power, or get up in like in front of a room of people that like scare you and like say something that you really want to say or that you feel passionately about. Like it's scary to sit in a room when people are like physically sitting higher than you. They're like physically looking down at you, and that's by design. Like that is like it's meant to be scary. And you know, so I think thinking through like some of the background on these things and how like structurally we built like even our buildings, our government buildings are meant to make one person feel more powerful than another. And like just thinking about how many things are at play that you're, you know, that have nothing to do with the interpersonal connection, and just really trying to like hone in on that interpersonal connection. Like what do we have in common? You know, like how can I relate to this person? They, you know, don't have the same like working class kind of struggle that I'm having. Like how can I word this in a way that they can see? But when you strip away all that, like all that extra stuff and like the systems that like we're built on and the, you know, all the stuff around us that contribute to those like negative interactions, when you take all that away, it's really just about talking to a person, like, because we all bleed the same. So as they say.
Yes, as they say. So being
that's a horrible quote.
No, the whole rest of this
horrible.
The whole episode is going to be built on that quote.
I take that back. Actually, retract.
No, this is long form. We can't do away with it.
Tell Joe Rogan that.
I mean, I like the fact that you put me in the same room as Joe Rogan. I'll take that. That's a huge. I'll take that W right there. So it's being aware of the institutions that are already kind of stacked against you, literally from a height difference. Knowing that the person you're talking to is actually just a person, and being not happy, but comfortable in conflict.
Yeah, I think being comfortable in conflict is like a skill that few people have and most people need.
Yeah.
And we're always telling kids to be better at conflict, but we have no skills.
We
got nothing. We're just like making it up as we go along.
Why don't you talk a little bit about Rebirth Equity?
Okay, so Rebirth Equity Alliance is like a bridge building organization, and we try to just like work with people who are the most marginalized in our society. So like Black women, trans women, and just like increase their ability to have birth justice. And so like we define reproductive justice as the right to have kids, not have kids, and parent the kids we have in safe and sustainable communities. So birth justice is like all those rights around birth, like have options during birth, have like informed consent, and just be able to parent your children in like environments that are safe for them. And so within the birth justice movement, there's it's like a space where everyone's for it. No one wants like more kids, like, you know, like hurting or like not having the resources they need to thrive. But we kind of fill the space where organizations that, you know, are more liberal, and organizations that are more conservative and have the same goals can find each other and like amplify each other's work. So we host things like reproductive justice like meetups, so that organizers can like meet with each other and find work that we're doing that's similar, because amplifying work is one, a good cost savings for nonprofits and like smaller grassroots organizations, because we can like everyone can spend half the money on an event that reaches twice the people because it's two audiences. It's a good cost savings. It's like a good for like connecting people with other people's work. It's for a lot of reasons, like connections like that are important. So we do meetups like that. We do a mobile mental health clinic, which is like we have it at community spaces, and community members can come out and get a free 1 hour like individual or group counseling session. We do carnal knowledge, which is like adult sex ed, because like none of us know anything about sex or like how it works. We're all just like guessing.
Yeah.
And so it's like a community conversation around sexuality and body positivity. And like we do like centering groups, we have a directory, do all kinds of stuff. And we only do things that our community has asked us to do, which is really important to me.
Yeah.
Because, you know, so many times like people like with more power or more resources will say, this is what poor people need. This is what like Black people need. This is how we fix those problems. But they've never actually like asked a poor person or a Black person like what they need. And so it's really important to us that like we are only doing work that our communities ask for. We're all grassroots funded, so we like fund all of our work through individual donations, and things like $5 Friday, like, hey, send us your coffee money today. And yeah, we do all of our fundraising is like selling t-shirts and stuff like that. And we've done so much with it. And the reason that we work like that is because we want to continue to do work that like people have asked us for. We want to continue to like lift up the voices of like impacted communities, right? And in order to do that, we can't be like tied to, sometimes grant funding comes with a lot of rules. And like corporate donations come with a lot of rules, or like they, you know, want a lot of input on your work. And we want to like continue to be really community based. So Re+Birth has grown. We do implicit bias trainings for healthcare providers. Because, you know, we've shown that like racial bias kills people, but like all kinds of biases harm people in care settings. And so we go around the country and teach implicit bias to providers, like, and yeah, we've grown so much, and we hope to continue to grow and have the capacity to do like even more things. But like, yeah, anyone can make change, and I'm always excited to see like new people making change.
I kind of gathered three things out of that that I want to expand on, because that's really awesome, by the way. You're saying that you really get a good feedback from the community, and you're doing only what they're looking for, right?
Right.
How did you create that feedback loop so that how are you going out and figuring out exactly what is needed? What does that look like?
So it just means you show up, like, so you use tactics like co-design, which is a cool thing to look into. It's like when you vary your feedback techniques, so you're not just getting feedback from one group of people. So like you and your business were looking for feedback from your consumers, you'd send them like a survey, right? So like, what if someone is not good at staying on top of their email? How do they provide you with feedback? So like co-design tactics are like, hey, maybe have a survey and have like someone text them, or maybe have a survey and like have a phone line. So it's like about varying your kind of techniques you use to get feedback. So yeah, we do use tactics like co-design. And we also just make a priority of like attending other people's events, because if you're only coming to your own stuff, then you're working in a silo, you're getting the same people there every time. And the way to meet new people is to actually be out where people are. So I think like interpersonal kind of face-to-face interactions are really important for staying grassroots.
That's good. So basically finding multiple ways to get the voice from your community back to you and really staying on top of it.
Right, exactly.
Another thing you mentioned, the remote, going out with the remote mental health clinics.
Mobile mental health.
I almost had it.
Half of our board members can't say it either, so it's fine.
Oh, okay. All right. So mobile mental health clinics. The first thing that popped in my head, just because from what I've seen, that's sadly very not mental health in general. I feel like is not put out there enough, and it's really the community is not served by that. When you've put these mobile mental health clinics on, did I say it right? Okay, awesome. How often do you see or you service someone who's never even stepped into an office to talk about their mental health?
I mean, that's like the goal, so pretty common. We try to like vary where we have them and have them move around so they're accessible to like different neighborhoods. And we have like great therapists that volunteer, but also if any therapist sees this and wants to volunteer,
Yes.
Please hit us up at hello@rebirthequity.org, because we always need like more volunteers for therapists. So we have like a cool network of people that will come out, and it's usually like a 3-hour thing. So and like any person can lead a group counseling session, and those are actually my favorite, because you're like in community, and so many of like despair kind of things that plague our communities are about like being isolated. So I think that group therapy can also be very powerful. Yeah. So we use volunteers to lead like group therapy sessions, which is great, and then we can like save our counselors for the one-on-one kind of things. And there's a lot that goes into it, and it's always growing and always improving, and it's a program I'm really proud of. And I would consider getting funding for that.
Fair enough. No, I think it's a really awesome idea, and at least from my perspective, I think that's really not enough people talk about it. Yeah. Kind of a random offshoot of that, I've seen something come up recently where there's like services for like telecommunication or texting.
Telehealth,
stuff like that. What do you think about that?
I love those telehealth kind of services, and I think that they should just be a standard part of insurance, and like a lot of insurance doesn't cover them, so they're only accessible to like people who can pay out of pocket for the most part, but they're becoming more accessible, and I would really love to see them be just like a standard part of even like Medicaid, because I think access to therapy it's like transformative for our communities, especially for kids, and like it's so hard as a parent to get therapy for your kid, because kids don't get out of school till 3:30. Yeah. You don't get out of work till 5. So like, when is this appointment supposed to happen? Like, right? Like, our therapists just working weekends now, and I've been missing that. So like events like Mobile Mental Health Clinic, which is on the weekends, and we also have therapy for kids and childcare every time. It's important to have childcare, things you want community members to come out to. Yeah. We ask people to like treat their children as a separate entity from them all the time, and that's not always feasible. Like we need to have things where kids can come. And so we like try to keep all those things in mind, and when we grow that program and see where we can reach more people.
Oh, definitely. I'm definitely looking forward to that one a lot, because I don't know, there's a really I've noticed because there was something on your site that said how forgot exactly how you termed it, but our society is so just like driven and ambition first, and like get things done first, that everything else is kind of put to the side, and mental health is put to the side. And I think there's just like a culture now that's so much where it's just like, stop crying about it and just get over it.
I read a book last year called Pleasure Activism. Okay. And it's by an author, Adrienne Marie Brown. And it was really about just like finding, when you're doing movement work like this, like finding the joy in movement work, because like this is for the living, like, right? Like a good friend of mine said that to me the other day, and it like stuck with me. Like, organizing is for the living. If you're creating change and you're not like enjoying it in the process and like finding that joy, then what are you building for, right? So that was a good point.
Okay, I almost forgot exactly what I was going to say, but I figured it out right now. Hey, we're doing good. So you had mentioned how there's the grants take a lot of paperwork and rules to get funding, as well as there's a lot of rules for funding from corporations. You mentioned there's different ways that you get funding, the $5 Fridays, which sounds like a great deal at Subway as well. No longer $5 footlongs. I include that. Very sad about that. Footlongs. Yep. Thank you, Subway, for no longer having that. Thank you for Jared too.
You gotta cut that out. We don't have the rights.
No, yeah. Okay. That's gonna get pulled down. Actually, since I don't have it monetized, I don't think
it's okay.
So like, it's free.
It's fine.
Yes.
That one's on us.
No, come buy from us. But all right. So you had mentioned how you have a lot of different ways that you do funding. You can't really get a whole lot of funding from the grants or from corporate because there's a lot of rules around it. I know.
And also, we're all volunteer, and no one has time to write grants.
Right. That's fair. No one has time.
Not one of us.
So let's say someone just started off their nonprofit. They have this great idea. They've taken your advice. They started to do something right now without getting permission from someone, but they're like, holy shit, how do I raise money? Like, how do I come up with great ideas like you have? What would be some advice you'd give someone to really get the ball rolling on getting money coming in?
So like the first thing before you think about like money coming in is you want to like not go broke doing movement work. Like, because when I first started doing kind of activism work, like I just would spend every penny that I made on it, and you just can't. It's not sustainable. So if you want to be around to like see the future that you're trying to create, like don't go broke doing this work. And then I would say just talk to like some people that you trust, like create you know, a team of like the best people, and get like individual stakeholders on board, teach them why this work is important, like host a community workshop, just start talking to people about your idea and showing up at like community events, and before you know it, it'll be further than you ever thought it would be.
Got it. Obviously you're running this as well as working a steady job, as well as running a family, as well as keeping this house immaculate. I know you said it wasn't clean, but compared,
it's medium clean.
It's your medium clean is like stellar compared to my dump. So it's definitely, I'm not used to this clean, which is on me, I guess. But so you're doing all these things. How do you keep the sanity? How do you make sure that there's time for everything and you don't have it all spill over into each other?
I mean, I live by my planner, but I also like reevaluate my planner daily. So like I put everything in my calendar, which is important to like remembering to show up to things. But also I look at it every day and say, maybe I made this meeting with a friend, you know, 3 months ago, and it was a great idea then, but maybe like I'm having a hectic week and I see on social media that they're maybe having a hectic week also. Let's reschedule this. It's okay to like change things up, even if they've been on your calendar for a long time. So just like keeping that kind of sense of flexibility has been really crucial to like fitting everything in and prioritizing.
Changing when it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you could fit me in, so I'm very excited about that. I know I never have the best timing whenever I call you. I know going back to the council, going to the council meetings and everything like that, and talking about living in conflict, something while you're going through all that, I feel like you have some great stories.
Nope.
No great stories at all? Or just nothing you want to share?
I don't. About city council?
No, like just like that kind of like back and forth battle.
Oh gosh. You like every week I have those stories.
Okay.
But like now that you've asked me to share a story, I'm like, I don't know.
Okay, think of story pack. No, think of one time where you brought something to the city council to make a change or whatever, and you had.
I'll tell you about one time they actually did what I asked them to do, and then I was like so surprised and shocked, and I couldn't even be excited about it because like, like, oh, this is what it feels like to have them listen to you. Like this one time, my neighborhood association was like opposing a zoning change because we hadn't had a chance to review it.
Yeah. And
they are always like passing. They pass like millions of dollars in zoning contracts every week at city council, and no one pays attention to them. Right. And so, you know, we're there to talk about social issues all the time, and they just are looking at their phones or looking in the air. They're not really paying attention to us. But like they very much care about zoning, right? Okay. So it was like weird to have them actually listen to me, but I was just asking them to postpone the vote so that we could review it and like ask the questions of the person like that was requesting the zoning change. And then when I got back to my seat, my city council person, Carlos, was like, oh, you didn't respond to my email. We tried to contact you, and I didn't know that you needed more time. And I was like, I just told you right now. Like, I'm not really sure why you're getting so aggressive, Carlos.
Settle down, Carlos.
Settle down. And he actually did postpone it for a couple weeks. And that was like, it was a really like nice feeling, but also surprising because like they are never listening.
So every now and then you just have to like cut in some zoning law stuff.
Yeah, that's really, They spent like half an hour a couple weeks ago on this sign. Like somebody wanted like an extra large sign.
Really?
And they talked about it for so ad nauseum. They talked about it for so long.
What was this sign for?
The View, that apartment complex when you get on 35,
Okay.
like that it's like a brand new luxury apartment complex, and they wanted like a 5-foot sign, but the regulation was like a 3-foot sign, and so like everyone had input on this sign, and Carlos had to like flex his engineer muscles, and he's like, if you do this math equation into your Excel spreadsheet, like you so it was like, you can leave that in.
I really will. I just died because this is so ridiculous.
So they spend so much time on zoning, but you're like, hey, our policies got someone killed. Let's spend some time on that. And they're like, no, we'll just have a panel. And like what we're asking them for context is a police oversight, just like a community board that can subpoena records from the police and like some community kind of input on what the police are doing. And our proposal would cost like $400,000 on the high end.
Yeah.
And we asked them for that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And this is before Tatiana Jefferson was murdered that we were asking for this. And what they ended up doing was spending the same amount of money on a panel to review police policy. But like you could have actually implemented police oversight. But like, no, let's just ask other people in power for advice and spend money on that instead. And so, to go over there week after week and be talking about like social issues, and they just are like glazed over, and then you're like, hey, how about this zoning thing? And they're like, oh wow, thank you for your input. See, we love our community members. Like zoning, yay! So I'm ready for a new year. I'm ready for a new council. I'm ready for a fresh start for Fort Worth.
So what does that fresh start look like?
It looks like new city council members, and it looks like a new mayor, and it looks like people waking up and caring, and it looks like just a lot less politics and a lot less high level things and a lot more like person to person change. We do this thing called soup, and we had the first one in December, and our next one is March 22nd. I think that's a Sunday. And it's at Shipping and Receiving at 6:30, and what it is a community dinner, and it's a micro granting dinner. So like, say you have an idea for change, you want to solve hunger, and you want to start a community garden.
Okay.
All these community members come out for a donated meal. Like, we get like a restaurant to donate a meal. You can come out, give a suggested donation of $10. Get your dinner and listen to 4 people pitch their good ideas for the community for 4 minutes with no tech, just like you talking to your people, know. And you don't have to be a nonprofit or a business. You can just be a person with a good idea for Fort Worth. And then at the end of dinner, everyone votes on which theory for change or which idea for change they want that money to go to, and all the money from the door goes to this group. And it's so transformative because we don't need anyone's permission to make our community better. Like, that is something that's a grant. It's money that we're giving to our community that like we didn't have to ask anyone for. We didn't have to ask a business for. You know what I mean? Right. And so it's really transformative. It's not political. It's just like dinner with your neighbors. There's great music. There's great energy. There's great food. And I'm really excited to do that every quarter this year. Because I think that we need more stuff that's just like people connecting off of the internet. Just like, hey, you live like down the street. We're both in Fort Worth. We both want a better Fort Worth. Like, let's do this. So this time, the first time we did it in December, the money went to like a male mentorship program. And it was like $900. Our first one, we raised $900 at just like $10 at the door. And
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was a great meal. It was like such a good time. So that's like the one thing I would like ask people to come to if they're from Fort Worth and see this. It's like soup, Fort Worth soup. And yeah,
the
like
soup
stuff like
stand
that.
For something?
No, it's actually an idea that originated in Detroit. So the original one's on DetroitSoup.org, and it's like a really fantastic idea. There's usually like art or music or something, and it's just like a way to make change happen that doesn't require a whole bunch of bureaucracy. And that's kind of like my focus for 2020 is just like getting out of needing all these systems to like be effective. Like, how can I make change without needing like everyone else's help? Like, how can we just do this here? And like, so, you know, like public safety, like what do we really need to be safe? Or like what's making us safe? Like looking at questions around that, looking at like what makes us feel like strong as a community. Because like funding a good idea for my community makes me feel like my community is strong. Like we can make this idea happen. We don't need like a grant or a bank or, you know what I mean? Like that makes me feel strong as a community member. So I'm doing a lot of thinking about what actions I can take that will cause that kind of change on like an individual level and have it spread, you know?
So obviously there's like a lot of direct access when you have those things happening, whereas you're on the complete opposite end coming to city council trying to make changes like literally square peg round hole. So what's it going to take? I feel like I want to wrap up with this. So what's it going to take for us to get to a point one day, maybe, hopefully, where local politics get to a point where it's more community driven and less red tape? Like how would that ever be possible?
I think it just will take like people asking for that and a voice that's louder than Ed Bass's bank account or whatever, you know, like it's people asking for that. Loud. I know, like people just asking for that continuously.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't get what you don't demand.
Right.
Change has almost never been caused by like peaceful methods, unfortunately. And how, like, that's a big idea that's also worth thinking about. Like, how do you create change in your community without it becoming like a thing that's divisive in your community? But like, obviously we need positive changes. So yeah, it is a big difference, like doing something on this individual level and like speaking truth to power and asking those people to change. And, you know, they do, like that strategy works, that kind of continuous, harping on stuff, not harping on, but you know, like continuous like pressure on people for that. Like that kind of strategy works, but it takes a lot of work. And I saw a meme today that was like, the reason that choirs can hold notes for so long is that there's so many voices that if someone stops to breathe, like people can stop to breathe when they need to and it doesn't interrupt the note. And I think that organizing is also like that. Like you have to have enough people willing to show up that if someone needs to breathe, they can. And so many times we just work ourselves until there's no joy and it's not fun anymore. And you know what I mean? And like, yeah, it's not always going to be fun. Like positive change doesn't always equate to like fun and joy, but you have to be able to like find fun and joy in parts of it or you won't be able to sustain it.
Yeah. I really like that. That's the quote of that. The other quote, not so much. That's the quote of the podcast. Oh, well, I think I'm going to end on there.
Okay.
That was amazing, by the way. And thank you so much for Jen coming on to this podcast of mine, which is trying to become increasingly better. Now that you're on, hopefully I make it significantly better. This is Jen Sarduy with Re+Birth Equity. I'm Roger Dupre with Eastwood Energy. I hope anyone watching who is looking for inspiration to start a nonprofit has been inspired. If I remember anything to take away from this, it would be come together as a group, as a community, and always put in the work. Don't be scared to start and do what you can do without needing permission. Don't be intimidated by the forces that will, because they're just people too. And help out your community and get out there and just go down the street and meet someone, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, see you guys next time. Thank you so much.